Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Ikeda Center virtual dialogue. Thank you all so much for joining. It's 2 o'clock now, and we're just going to give a couple minutes for everyone to join. But in the meantime, we have this new tradition now for our virtual dialogues because we have people tuning in from all around the world, and we want to know where you're joining us from. So if you can utilize the chat function and just type in there what city you're joining from or what country, so we can see all the wonderful places that are being represented on this Zoom call today. So UK, India, France, Italy, Canada, upstate New York, amazing. Brazil, Seattle, India, California. My challenge is always reading everything fast enough. Great, so please keep on typing, and usually after the event, we count all the different countries that have joined, so we'll do a write-up on that. So please continue to share where you're joining us from, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. So someone asked, where is this broadcast from? So most of us are located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but since the pandemic, the majority of us are in the comfort of our own home. So we're kind of in all different places throughout Massachusetts. So thank you all for joining. We'll start in just a minute or two. We have someone from Johannesburg, South Africa. Amazing. In Argentina, greetings. Thank you all so much for joining. We have about 177 of us and counting. So I know we had a couple hundred registrations. So I think we're going to have a wonderful discussion today. So thank you all so much for joining on time. We'll start in just one more minute. I'm always so encouraged by all the participants who join internationally. I know some of you, it must be maybe in the middle of the night. So it's really, we're so encouraged and appreciate you staying up late to join. And I hope you have your coffee in hand and you can get some rest too afterwards. But hopefully you'll feel very inspired after our event. You can get a good night's rest too. 11:30 p.m. So we're good. That must be India. Hello from Brazil. Obrigado. That's all the Portuguese I know. Someone's joining from Japan. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Amazing. Wow. I hope you don't have to work tomorrow. Well, maybe you're working from home so you can sleep in a little bit. Great. All right, so it's 2:05, so we're going to get started. So welcome everyone again to our third Ikeda Center virtual dialogue. I was just thinking today that it's so hard to believe that we're already in the month of July, and we've had 2 of these already, and this is our 3rd one. And with everything that's happening in our world right now, we're just so happy to continue to have these opportunities to connect with all of you, not just here locally in Cambridge, but from all around the world, as we can see in our chat. So thank you so much again for joining us today. So my name is Lillian, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, and I'm the program manager here at the Ikeda Center. And since we have maybe some newcomers and people who are learning about the center for the first time, I thought I could share a little background on the work that we do here. So the Ikeda Center for Peace, Learning, and Dialogue is the name of our center. And we were founded in 1993, and our mission since then has been to build cultures of peace through learning and dialogue. And all of our work here at the center is aimed at helping to establish a shared global ethic across cultures and religions, an ethic based on respect for the absolute dignity of life itself, a firm belief in the human potential for good and for transforming the world, and a clear recognition of the interdependence of all life. And our founder, Daisaku Ikeda, is a peace builder, a writer, educator, and Buddhist leader. And he established this center really with the hope that people from all walks of life, all different faiths, ethnicities, backgrounds, experiences, can come together to engage in genuine dialogue, which he believes is the surest path to peace. And so usually we host events and seminars at our center. We also publish books. Since the pandemic, though, we've been really striving to create these virtual spaces like this one, where we can continue to engage in dialogue, especially in these uncertain and challenging times. So thank you again for joining us. So the theme for today's virtual dialogue, as I'm sure most of you know, is the poetic spirit, our power to reconnect and reconnect a divided world. So why this theme at this time, right? With the increasing spread of the coronavirus and the great social unrest happening throughout the nation and the world as a result of decades of systemic racism and discrimination, we recognize that everyone at this time is really grappling with how to navigate the world at this time. What is each of our roles? What can we do? What conversations should we be having? And how do we have those conversations? And how do we envision, right, and create a better future together? So you might be wondering, what does poetry or the poetic spirit have to do with anything? And honestly, I had this question myself as well, because I've always struggled with poetry throughout my life, and in particular in high school and in college, I couldn't for the life of me write a poem. So I just assumed that it was because I wasn't smart enough to understand poetry. And as a result, I just avoided reading poems in general. But I am happy to share that in preparation for this event, my understanding of what it means to be a poet has completely transformed, thankfully, ready just in time for this event. And when I read Mr. Ikeda's essay about the poetic spirit, he talks about it as this power that we each possess to retune and reconnect a discordant, divided world. And so he says that the poetic spirit can be found in any human endeavor. When the spirit of poetry lives within us, even objects do not appear as mere things. Our eyes are trained on an inner spiritual reality. A flower is not just a flower. The moon is no mere clump of matter floating in the skies. Our gaze fixed on a flower or the moon, we intuitively perceive the unfathomable bonds that link us to the world. And in this essay, he continues by saying, in this sense, children are poets by nature, by birth. Treasuring and nurturing their poetic hearts, enabling them to grow, will also lead adults into realms of fresh discovery. We do not, after all, exist simply to fulfill desires. Real happiness is not found in more possessions, but through a deepening harmony with the world. So this really inspired me to want to learn more about the poetic spirit and how I can get some more of that in my life. So as I tried to apply this in my day-to-day life, I started noticing that this poetic spirit that Mr. Ikeda refers to is really in many ways my connection with myself, my inner self, and an understanding of my potential and power to interact with the world more deeply and more meaningfully. And I started feeling more present in conversations, and even appreciating moments of struggle and suffering, which seem to happen more frequently these days, at least for me. And I also found myself having more courage to engage with others and be more vulnerable with those around me. And so I'm really excited to continue to explore this poetic spirit with all of you. And in preparing for this event, Dr. Sarah Wider, who you'll get to meet in just a little bit, she reminded us of a poem by Mr. Ikeda titled "Salute to Poets," which resonated strongly with me because I feel it really speaks to our role in relation to the current moment. And so I just wanted to share two stanzas from the poem with all of you. And so Mr. Ikeda, he says, "Society is awash with false discourse, with propaganda that incites xenophobic rejection, with low and ugly rumor whose sole purpose is to degrade and demean, with shrieked abuse that destroys dignity, tearing into the heart like a lethal blade. Ah, poets, now is the time to use the words of compassion and truth, the words of universal justice that roil and seethe within your heart, to use these words to dispel the dark and heavy clouds of language laden with false and evil intent, to stir new winds of hope and courage, to bring about a new and golden dawn." So with that, I hope, together today we can discover our own poetic spirit and what that means for each of us, and be able to use it to really awaken from within hope, courage, compassion, and wisdom, so we can powerfully take a stand at this time to fight for truth and justice in our own lives and in our communities. So with all of that said, I want to get our event started. But first, I'd like to give an overview of what to expect today from our event. So we're going to start out with a fun icebreaker activity to channel our inner poets, and then a short video. Then following that, we have an exciting panel discussion planned between Dr. Sarah Wider of Colgate University and two of our youth committee members, Isaiah Moon and Valentina Frasisti, where they will talk about what the poetic spirit means to them, and also how they are using it to navigate and find hope during this time. They'll also be sharing some poems that have inspired them recently, so please look forward to that. And I just want to say that it's really been my greatest pleasure to be in these planning meetings with these three panelists who truly embody this poetic spirit, and you'll be able to witness that live in action in just a little bit. So I'm so excited to continue to learn more from them. And it's been so fun, honestly, these planning meetings. I feel like I'm taking a poetry class, but a really fun poetry class every time we meet. And so after the panel discussion, we'll break out into small groups, and actually we'll all have the opportunity to create a poem together in our small groups. And then we'll finish with a virtual open mic where you'll be able to share the poems that you created together. And then we'll have a wrap up by Dr. Wider at the end. And so I just wanted to say also that Dr. Wider is a longtime friend of the center and of Mr. Ikeda. And in fact, they have a published dialogue called The Art of True Relations. And so if you're interested to learn more about that, we'll have maybe a link to the book too. But we're just so thrilled and honored to be working with Sarah at this time and really be able to learn from her poetic spirit. So thank you so much again, Sarah, for joining us for this event. So without further ado, I'm going to actually pass it over to our events and publications coordinator, Henri, to lead our icebreaker activity. So take it away, Henri.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lillian. And thank you everyone for joining today. It's so good to see all of your bright faces. I hope you're all doing well. And so, yeah, just to follow up on Lillian's intro, how many people joining today would say that they are a poet? So if you can raise your hand in the screen. Yeah, so I see some of you. That's great. We're so happy to have the poets here. And for those of you who didn't raise your hand, hopefully by the end of today or this session, you'll feel like you've tapped into your inner poet, and that you feel like a poet. But our icebreaker is really created so that we can take one step forward towards that. And we created a formula so you can find your poet pen name for the icebreaker. So let me just share my screen here so you can see the formula, and just be great. So the first step, as you can see here, is if you can think of one positive word you would use to describe yourself. So something that helped me in thinking of this was, how would your friend describe you, or what's just one thing in general that you like about yourself? And if you think of that, today I thought of the word grateful. I feel grateful that I can be grateful about the things that I have in my life right now. So just give you a second to think of a positive word to describe yourself. And then if you have that word, then the second word is to think of one word to describe the state of the world right now. Otherwise, you might fill in the blank for the world is in a state of blank. So whatever word comes to your mind. Right now, it might be, some challenging words like chaos, but one word that I thought of was a state of renewal, that the world right now is in a state of renewal. So give you another couple seconds to think of that word. Great. So if you're fast, you might already have both of those words, but if you need more time, definitely continue thinking. But the third step is really just to combine those two words together, and then you'll have your poet pen name. So for me, my words were grateful and renewal. So I would be poet, grateful, renewal. So I'd be interested to see what others come up with. Poet, let's see, poet optimistic yearning, poet grounded ambiguity, poet smiley distress, poet caring chaos, poet genuine mess, poet friendly chaos, a lot of chaos, disarray, caring reviving, poet bubble mess, poet loyal treacherous. Wow. Yeah, so the chat is moving really fast. So if you hold on to your poet name, please write it down. Poet warm frightening, poet happy flux. Yes, these are all really wonderful. So yeah, please hold on to that formula if you ever need your poetic name, and continue posting in the chat. Poet resilient transformation, poet compassionate healing. Great, thank you so much all for sharing. And if you want, you can even rename yourself on your screen as your poet name. To do that, you would go to the top of your screen. There should be like 3 little dots, and you can click on it and click on rename. And if you'd like to type that in as your name for today, that would be wonderful. If not, you can definitely leave your name as is. But thank you so much for participating, and I will hand it back over to Lillian.
Yay, thank you so much, Henri, and thank you everyone for sharing your awesome poet pen names. I feel like if poets were superheroes, which I think they are, these are awesome superhero names. Yes, so thank you all so much. So now that you have your poet pen names ready, I know some of us might not think of ourselves as poets, just as you shared earlier in response to Henri's question. But just as everyone has been saying, and as Mr. Ikeda shared, we each have this poetic spirit right within us that we can really tap into. So to inspire us further, we invited some of our youth committee members who come from all different backgrounds, fields of study, areas of work, to practice channeling their own poetic spirit and to model that for us. So we've made it into a video, which we'd like to share with all of you at this time. And so actually, I wanted to ask if everyone can turn their cameras off for this portion to help us with the connection speed. And you can do so by clicking on the camera icon on the lower left corner of your screen. And so please enjoy the video. So actually, some of our youth committee members are here on this virtual event too. So if you see them, you can say hi and maybe ask them for their autograph if this video becomes famous. But thank you to our youth committee members for participating. And so hopefully you're all feeling inspired and excited to channel your own poetic spirit. So now for the moment we've all been waiting for, our panel discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to our office and program assistant, Priyandra, to facilitate the panel discussion together with Sarah, Valentina, and Isaiah today. And I'm so sorry to ask this of everyone again, but just because we want to make sure our panelists are all in the main screen, if again, for the panel discussion portion, if we can invite everyone to turn your cameras off, that would help us, again, just with being able to see our panelists, but also with the connection speed. And then afterwards, we'll invite everyone to come back on. So thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you, Pri.
Thank you so much, Lillian, and thank you so much, everybody, especially our panelists today, Dr. Sarah, Valentina, and Isaiah. I can't wait to see where our dialogue will take us, and I'm sure everyone here feels the same way. So without further ado, let's get this poetry party started. To begin, it would be great if each of you could briefly introduce yourselves and share a little bit about the main poem you'll be referring to in our conversation. Sarah, do you mind going first? Oh, you're muted, Sarah.
Oh, technology. I'm so happy to be able to be here in a way that brings us together in so many wonderful ways across time and space. It's odd to think how the technology actually makes this possible, even in these most difficult times. So like I said, I'm Sarah, and I think I live for poetry. I'm certainly put back together by poetry. It really holds me together, especially at times like this, if we've ever had a time like this, which of course we haven't, not in this particular way. And the poem that I keep gravitating back toward is a poem I've known for a long time. I've shared it often with my students. It's really been wonderful when I had that opportunity. It's by Leslie Marmon Silko, who is from Laguna Pueblo in what is now New Mexico, kind of the western part of New Mexico. And it's a poem called Skeleton Fixer. And I gravitate toward this poem because it both talks about how words get scattered all over the place and we're trying to put them back together into some kind of meaning, but it also ties into a very old story from her community about a person who just keeps putting things back together and putting things back together regardless. And I'll just read one line very quickly because I think it's so beautiful and it so speaks to this moment. And I'm going to hold up, my book is just all falling apart. So this is the book it comes from, but now it's just in pieces, but I guess that's appropriate. And so his name is Old Badger Man, also called Old Skeleton Fixer. And he speaks to the bones that he sees have fallen to pieces. And then Silko, the poet, writes, because things don't die, they fall to pieces maybe, get scattered or separate, but Old Badger Man, he can tell how they once fit together.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. Valentina, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I'm Valentina. I'm a PhD student in Italian literature and culture. And the poem that I want to share that made my day a few weeks ago, it is a poem written by one of my friends and a very young poet. And her name is Malia Elsner. The title of the poem is Butterfly, Movement Number 2. And the line that I will quote are the ending part of it, and where she said, "Where will you go? I husk your hands. In diaspora, I wait patiently to know." And what I like deeply of these two lines is the connection she made between waiting and knowing. Because in this time of COVID and be restricted at home and be waiting, at least for me, about visa renewal and how the semester will look like, it seems that the only thing I can do is to wait to people to decide about my future. And so I was assuming a passive role, but instead, no, like I can wait and know is something that is very extremely active. And so I really like the way she bonded these two words, these two action, and also to me, know resonate with grow. So when I read, it's like I wait to know and to grow, and that me keep smiling for a bit, and when I'm challenging, I kind of come back again to this poem and remember of her and of her writing, and it really helps me during this day.
Thank you, Valentina. I feel like that really captures the exploration part of this time too. Isaiah, take it away.
Hello, everybody. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity and everyone here connecting, have a time out. But my name is Isaiah Moon. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've always had a connection with poetry, and, I actually, I write poems a lot of writing recently since all we have is time. But I'm just going to share a brief line of something I wrote, this morning for this meeting. Then just like that, the moment of inspiration came right back, this time 200-fold, a type of feeling I had when I was eating candy at 7 years old, a type of feeling where my name becomes in bold, a moment of clarity where I notice the forks in the road. I always feel it's important to have outlet, and, I feel like the Ikeda Center brings outlet, poetry brings outlet, and, I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaiah. This is really exciting already, and we've only gotten through the intros, everyone. So the founder of our center, Daisaku Ikeda, has once commented that, in fact, the poetic spirit can be found in any human endeavor, which is a really exciting quote to come across because personally, it reminded me of the importance to seek the opportunities to create value out of anything and everything. Because this poetic spirit that he refers to is within us. And so I'm interested to learn about what having a poetic spirit means to each of you. So yes, any thoughts?
If I can speak on that quickly, I would say since I was a kid, I've always was an overthinker. And I think a lot of people, kind of see life and we all have this reality plane that we see. So I feel, the poetic spirit is kind of combining what you see and what you think and what you feel, and really creating an outlet for yourself and using words to describe happenings that are constantly happening. I always refer back to the Harlem Renaissance, when the world in America, near Harlem, a lot of things were changing. So the culture of music, of poetry, of dance, everything kind of made sense with that time. So to me, the poetic spirit basically encompasses, what we can't explain. Since words can't explain, as people say, words can't explain. It's always a feeling or an attempt to, kind of express yourself. And I feel like just trying to express yourself, over time with poetry, literature, and music, things like that. I think people can really, kind of in tune to what you're saying without using just the words. So I feel like the poetic spirit really, boils everything down, and it just makes sense to, this, claim thy neighbor attitude and also claim thyself. So that's just kind of what I feel about it.
Yeah, I can just kind of connect right there with what you're saying, Isaiah, because when you talk about like that power of the felt moment, in the way that everything connects, like when you're mentioning Harlem Renaissance and how everybody was just like doing the music and doing the art and doing the performance and doing the writing, and that sense of it's all like this embodied experience that, yeah, sometimes we can kind of get it into words, but even that phrase is kind of funny. It's like you get it into the words, but that sense that there's something that's like connecting us all. And for me, that's what I've always felt with what President Ikeda calls the poetic spirit. It's that sense that there's this energy that's really connecting us. And I think about that both in terms of, sometimes I source it in like the world around us, like in the air and in the earth itself and in the sky, and this profound planet that we live on, which is always feeding us with this amazing energy. And I also think about how it's so transformative. And for me too, I've always seen this poetic spirit is just so deeply bound into kind of social justice, that it is all about transforming so that things are really in these good and right relations, whether that's with your human neighbors or whether it's with the, all forms of existence. And so I've felt that, spirit moving in so many different ways, and really connecting us all like Lillian said at the beginning, that's those unfathomable bonds that we keep trying to fathom, and lovely that we have words, or we have dance, or we have music that we can work with. But yeah, it's larger than all of that.
Yeah. I think I can connect to both of you said, because when I think about the poetic spirit, I think as something that is transforming our energy and our connection, and it also relates with like making and creating something new, because like the Greek word for poetry, poiesis, where poem comes from, it means to create from something that wasn't there before. And when I relate to this concept to my life, it's not just a matter of like writing word to express my feeling, but to be a poet is to perceive the vastitude and magnificence of everything we do, beyond the fact or the impression that this action can seem not spiritual or just ordinary things. So it's like transforming our daily routine in something beautiful and something just more vast than what it seems to be. That for me is a very channeling the poetic spirit in our life.
Everything you three have shared really makes me think of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but I remember one time either you wrote it somewhere or expressed it, of how the poet is one who speaks. Mm-hmm. And I think speaks, I interpret that really as, just as you all expressed, how we express ourselves, really being empowered by our means of expressing the beauty of our life in the web of life. And so I really appreciate everyone's expression of what the poetic spirit means to you. And this leads me to my second question. I would like to reshare Mr. Ikeda's quote that actually appeared a few times earlier, where it said, quote, "The poetic spirit has the power to retune and reconnect a discordant, divided world." And to that, actually, he goes on to say that true poets stand firm, confronting life's conflicts and complexities. And I was interested in hearing what you think he means by this.
Yeah, I mean, I could say something quickly. You know, I always think about, you know, when I think about, you know, poetry and, you know, as a kid, I always think about Dr. Seuss, you know, and I think, you know, what he inspired to do for, you know, for children, it really sets the boundary of like what fundamentally holds us together. And that, to me, you know, just what I think at this moment, really what holds us together is, you know, what we see, you know, just like we were saying last time, the reality plane and as it unfolds. But, you know, we all perceive reality different. And one thing, you know, that Dr. Seuss really did well is he really stretched it, you know, with a cat talking and he's cleaning your, it's just, you know, just kind of outlandish, but something you only can put in a book. Even on the movie, you know, it didn't look good, but in books and words, you know, it's kind of what it describes. So I think really what people need is a basic understanding, because, you know, what poetry brings, there's a lot of poetry in pain and you know, anger, happiness. So I really feel like it's a built-in compassion just by reading different cultures, poems and literature. It kind of makes sense to the bigger picture, you know, why we're all connected, like Sarah was mentioning earlier.
And thanks, Pri, for posing this question, because I was struggling a bit in order to understand this quote by Ikeda. So I wrote my answer because otherwise my mind was going everywhere, and I would like to read it, because what this quote means to me is that there is an official way to be considered poets, and there is the poetic spirit, which, in opposition to the official poet, is in all of us, since we are all capable to confront life's conflict and complexities. The fact that we are capable to do so, it doesn't mean that we always do. Therefore, this sentence encouraged me when I feel powerless and desperate to make space for new words, new perspective, and to start working not against my struggle, but with them, as if they were the words of the poem I can write today. So I try kind of to connect the confrontation we have in life to the poetic spirit, and not to consider them as opposites, but they are effect of the same source that is our life, and so they can be connected and they can interact.
Yeah, and to kind of just think about what both you and Isaiah were just saying, in terms of the seeing, and then also this being able to put together things that we might not have seen before, or how we can see them in a new way. And I really like, Valentina, what you were saying about opening space, because I think that's oftentimes what poets enable us to do, especially when things get so, I don't know, almost claustrophobic, in where we just cannot see anything different, we cannot see anything new. And when President Ikeda looks at so much of the poet's work as being born out of struggle, and also really understanding the value of struggle, that struggle is not something to be stepped away from, but always stepped into, and that in those struggles, that's where our profoundest meaning is made. And that understanding of this absolute work that we do is so hard. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But I think what I've always admired in poets who really embody that poetic spirit, who aren't just out for like a decoration or some kind of maybe acknowledgement, is that they're really trying to just stay with whatever is difficult in that moment. And I know Mr. Ikeda uses that phrase, to retune, and I think about that almost in like a musical sense, where things may seem so discordant or out of tune, and there's so many different possibilities there, right? Because you can say, okay, well, let's just tune it up, like your orchestra teacher might say. At the same time, somebody else might say, no, let's just stop and listen to all of the discords and see how they make a different music, and let's just relish that all these different sounds together and see how we can hear in a new way, just like we can see in a new way, like Dr. Seuss asks us to. And so I think, and President Ikeda asks us to really think about this poetic spirit that enables us to go into the discord or in the disharmony. It really is because there's so much there that, to go back to Valentina, what you were saying about the word poesis, there's so much there that can be where we start to create, where we start to make anew. And that's what I find very exciting about that prospect, even when the work is so difficult, obviously.
Yeah, wow. I was just thinking too, Mr. Ikeda talks a lot about how dialogue is the surest path to peace. And I was trying to think of the link between dialogue and a poetic spirit. And I think, Isaiah, you kickstarted the conversation of this, but everyone's unique and different, and we really want to embrace our differences and really learn from other values, and just the beauty of all the opposites and the similarities of life. And that's where dialogue, I think, is really the tool for us to really sit down in a shared space of vulnerability, and this willingness to learn from another person, with the hopes that they have this willingness too. So I feel a lot of poetic spirit in this space right now. And yeah, I was wondering with this question, if any one of you wanted to share another line or stanza of your poem that really resonates with you in terms of, yes, confronting these complexities of life.
I can, from this, it's kind of a story poem, Skeleton Fixer, and it's such an interesting poem because, it starts off with, old Badger Man, and he finds these bones, and he doesn't know who they belong to, but he just wants to make certain that things can be put back together and made right. And he is looking all over the place, and there's no heart left, and this creature needs a heart, and so he brings in the butterflies, and then at the very end he brings the creature back to life. And wouldn't you know, and for those of you who may know some stories from various whether it's from Laguna or whether it's from maybe all over the country, Coyote stories, when Coyote shows up, there's just chaos happens. And so the creature that old Badger Man is put back together, it's old Coyote Woman. And so she just kind of gets up and she just runs off, and she doesn't even say thank you. And here he's been so careful in putting back together these bones that were scattered, but it doesn't stop him, it doesn't deter him. he just keeps on going because he knows that things always need to be brought back together, and that, you know, you just keep doing that work. And so I guess I think a little bit about that because, you know, sometimes we so want to see the results just immediate and now, and or sometimes the results even seem to be going perhaps in a way that we go like, oh gosh, I didn't know that was going to happen. And yet being able to trust the process and trust if it's a good process, we just keep with it. And I think I go back to the dialogue and the poetic spirit. So if you have those two working together, that's going to be a trustworthy process.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to really go off, you know, like you're saying, like the extremes of life, you know, just you know, the poem I wrote actually, you know, I shared you guys the good part of it, you know, the inspiration, but the beginning is a moment of inspiration left just as fast as it came while I'm passing through space and time trying to reframe. Because, you know, I think it's really hard for everyone to always be, you know, inspired or encouraged, but at the last sentence of this poem, it said, you know, actually, it's not really long. If I can just share it quickly. A moment of inspiration left just as fast as it came while I'm passing through space and time trying to refame. My thoughts are as good as a bike pump to a car tire, so I keep pumping up ideas for my enthusiasm and ego to admire. Then just like that moment, and just like that, the moment of inspiration came right back, this time 200-fold, a type of feeling I had when I was eating candy at 7 years old. But at the end of it, I basically lost the inspiration again. But, you know, writing this poem showed proof that this inspiration existed in the first place. So I feel like we always go through this, you know, motion of finding inspiration and losing it. But, you know, really that's the rawest, you know, it's pretty raw. That's how life is. Life's always about a series of overcoming emotions. And, you know, Miles Davis said, you know, the last note may sound bad, but it's only good as it sounds from the next note on. So I feel, you know, kind of just maneuvering through time and space. We always have these endeavors that attack us. But, you know, I feel personally what I kind of zone into is if you acknowledge, you know, that things happened and you move on, I think that's kind of a poetic spirit because it's always about the next line that finds the past line. So I feel like that's really connected, it's really connected like life. You know, your last decision is based off your next decision, and it's the continued cause and effect, like President Ikeda, you know, he really talks about.
Wow, thank you, Isaiah. It also really captures, Mr. Ikeda talks about how he writes like in the moment. That's how his poetry is born. And I really felt the gift of the way you really created that. So thank you.
Nice, thank you.
I definitely want to leave room for Valentina too, if you wanted to share a stanza, but may I sprinkle in the last question as another segue into ways in which maybe you can share some additional lines? So I think we can all agree that 2020 has been quite the year. You know, one might say it has been a year of tremendous self-reflection, and that, you know, that there have been plenty of opportunities for us collectively to envision what we want our future to be in every sphere of our lives, despite even the uncertainties that do exist. But with that being said, the question I would like to pose is, how are you using your poetic spirit during this time to have hope and to navigate through what is happening in the world?
Yeah, thanks again for asking this question, because it really make me think deeply. And I realized that I don't feel I'm using at all my poetic spirit during these days, because I don't feel very capable of connecting with a deep part of me in this past month. So, but at the same time, I realized that I really enjoyed to prepare this event. And while preparing it, we wrote a poem all together, and I wrote some other personal life in my first language, that is Italian. So I think that it's true that I'm not actively using my poetic spirit, but because it is not a tool I have in my pocket that I took out when my hope or happiness are having a time, but it's definitely something that emerged when I'm struggling. And so it come to my mind a kind of an image that when you're it's kind of the breathing when you are swimming. The time you spend underwater is much more than the one you are actually breathing, but the breathing is what allows you to keep swimming. So I think that my poetic spirit this time is just like the breathing in the middle of the pool of a pool of struggles. And thanks to revitalize my poetic spirit with this event, and so through connection. And I would like to share another couple of lines from the poem Maya word that I think are connected with what I'm saying. And she wrote, "The tree trained against the wall can never be thick oak in the middle of the plain, but it may bear the sweetest fruit." So there are no standard to prove our poetic spirit in a moment, but it's there and it's growing. So yeah.
And just a quick insert, actually, because I noticed a lot of people commenting. These poems will be available, the ones that our panelists are referring to, somewhere on our website at some time. So yes, you will have access to them.
I think I'll jump in because I resonate so much with what Valentina, what you were saying about connecting or not with our poetic spirit at this point, because it has also been a sort of high and dry period for me. You know, it's just been a time where, yeah, I mean, I love your image of the fact that it's sort of like gasping, you know, if you will, or you're just trying to find air in some way, shape, or form, and that holds so much meaning in so many different ways. I realize that I have to be careful with that. And so I turn to other writers because their words still resonate. And again, I turn back to my music, which I think was probably in some ways my first language in an interesting way. And, you know, if you think about like the resonance of a string instrument, for example, like if you just move the bow across the string, or if you just pluck the string and you could just watch it move, and you can just, like, I play cello, so you can like actually feel the vibrations in your body. And I just love that feeling because it feels so healing, as I think indeed it is. And oftentimes poetic lines will do that for me as well. And so this section from a different poem, actually, from Joy Harjo, who's now our poet laureate for the United States, came to me. It's from a poem called Emergence. And I'll just read the little bit of it that just, I think, speaks so much to this moment now, and to hoping and holding, looking for that poetic spirit, even when we feel like maybe it's not quite where we can quite feel it. And so she writes, "The heart knows everything. I remember when there was no urge to cut the land or each other into pieces, when we knew how to think in beautiful." And I think I oftentimes try to live every day trying to remember, or trying to learn, or trying to understand, or trying to share with my students how we can again learn to think in beautiful.
Wow, thank you, Sarah. I hope we can all really leave this space really thinking and beautiful even more, because I'm sure the people here are doing that. To be mindful of the time, I have to wrap up this conversation soon, but I did want to, Isaiah, if you had any other thoughts you wanted to sprinkle, drizzle in.
yeah, I could throw something in. You know, it just makes me think, because, you know, especially, you know, at least in America, it's really a challenging time. I think, you know, more than ever, you know, racial tensions, presidential election, and, you know, this coronavirus, you know, so I feel just, you know, with what I've, you know, been dealing with, is really trying to put it down into where this, what does this time mean for my whole life, you know, since I feel like, you know, I think someone said it earlier, hopefully this doesn't happen again. This is the first time. So you know, it makes me really realize that this is something I should really pay attention to myself about, you know, about like what's happening. So I think really with the poetic spirit, and kind of what President Ikeda always, you know, mentions about just digging deep and really finding like your true meaning, your true divine, you know, mission. And I think really that's kind of where we're at right now. I feel there's a lot of fear, you know, that was in the past, but I really feel, you know, this is me just speaking, I think in the next couple of years, fear is not going to work as powerful as it used to. So I think that really means fear in us, you know, really taking time out to understand what's holding us back, you know, from the light. And this makes me, there's a poem actually by Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe, you know, he was kind of always like a emotional man and doing things like that. But this poem here is called Alone. I'm just going to read a brief excerpt of it. Right here it says, I'll just read. It is in its autumn tint of gold from the lighting in the sky as it passed me flying by from the thunder and the storm and the cloud that took the form when the rest of heaven was blue of a demon in my view. So, you know, in this poem, he just feels like no matter what, he can't see the beauty in life. And, you know, even though the blue sky, heaven, you know, there's a demon right here. And I feel a lot of times everyone's focusing on, you know, this invisible enemy that's definitely apparent. But I feel with the Poetic Spirit, you're actually, you know, like Sarah and like, you know, like you guys were just mentioning, it's really beautiful life, what it has to offer. And if you really break it down and just kind of enjoy what there is to enjoy, and I think really that can, you know, help you in the next coming years to really overcome. So that's really what I believe and what I'm trying to do is just really tackle my fear and do it poetically and not being so hard on myself, I guess.
Thank you so much, Isaiah. It really reminds me when Mr. Ikeda also says, this is paraphrasing it, but he says, happiness means to not be defeated. And I think with a poetic spirit, you can really do that and know that in the span of your life, there is always a time and place, whether in that moment, but it's actually a state of life. Like we can all become happy. So thank you so much for this lovely dialogue. And we hope that this next activity, which Lillian will be sharing with everyone, will excite people even more to channel their poetic spirits. So thank you so much, Sarah, Valentina, and Isaiah, and I'll pass it back to Lillian.
Thank you, Priandra.
Great. Thank you so much, Pri. And can we give our panelists and Priandra a round of applause? Or you can do the reaction button on your screen too. But I really want to say thank you so much to all of you. My heart is so full, and one of our participants said that she's so happy this is recorded so we can go back and savor all the good, you know, all the golden nuggets that you shared with us. So I was so happy to be reminded that yes, you know, we did record our virtual dialogue, so we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel. So please refer back to that. And you know, Sarah, I love what you said about how the poetic spirit enables us to go into the discord and the disharmony, and that's where we can start to create something new. That really gave me a mind-blowing moment in my head, and so I felt like I was in a recording studio watching all of you create this beautiful piece together. And so actually now we all have an opportunity to create something in our small groups, which we'll break into soon. And the panelists actually have been creating a poem together as they've been preparing for this event. So during our open mic, you'll be able to hear the poem that they created, but you'll also have an opportunity to create a poem now. So actually each of our panelists contributed a sentence which we'll be able to use to start our poem. So maybe I'm going to invite Henri to share a slide with all of you with the instructions for our breakout groups. Thank you, Henri. Great. So, so in your breakout groups, please discuss and choose one of the sentences, which you can see here that the panelists contribute. And this will be your opening line for your poem. And so using this opening line, so it could be either one of these here, at the heart of listening, I hear, walking with what I do not want to change. As I look into the future's eyes, this is what I say. So in your group, first decide which line you would like to use for your opening line. And then using that line, each participant can then respond and add your own lines to create a collective poem together. And once your group has completed your poem, we wanted to pose the following questions for you to discuss. So based on today's panel discussion and small group exercise, what do you think having a poetic spirit means? And then how do you think you can use this poetic spirit to better navigate the current state of our world? So we don't have a limit as to, how many lines you can create together. So, please, create to your heart's content, but also just be mindful of time. We have about 15 minutes to do this activity. So it's not a lot of time, but we wanted to have enough, please allocate some time for discussion too after you create your poem. And then one last thing to know is that after the small groups, we're going to come back and we're going to have a virtual open mic. So that's a time when we'll invite everyone to share the poems that you created. So if maybe one person wants to maybe note and write down your poems so that you can designate that one person to share on behalf of your group, that would be great. So with that, we're going to go into our breakout groups and we'll see everyone in about 15 minutes. So please enjoy.
How do we find our breakout group?
Oh, great question. So right now our staff, they're doing some behind the scenes magic. So once they put that through, actually you'll get a notification to join your breakout group, and all you have to hit is, I think it's join or accept. So
okay, thank you,
in a
Lily.
little bit.
Thank you.
Open it up now.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the main room. Hi everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you all had a wonderful poem creation session. I think I'm gonna give maybe a second or two for people to just join back in. We have about 180 participants. Did everyone have fun? Yeah, I was so encouraged by my group. I was thinking, oh my gosh, how is this gonna work? But one person after the other, just really shared from their hearts. So I feel like our poetic spirits were definitely awakened through the event. So I hope everyone had a great experience too. Okay, so I think everyone is back. So now is the time for our virtual open mic session. So this is, I think we have maybe about 10 minutes or so. We wanted to open the floor for any group to share the poems that they created. And, please feel free. I think many people are already doing this, sharing their poems in the chat. So I know not all groups will be able to share, but as you're posting them in the chat, I think we can also read along. So if you would like to share the poem you created, actually before we do that, so we actually, as I shared earlier, our panelists during this whole planning session, they created this poem together. And so I wanted to invite them to kick off our open mic today by sharing the poem that they created as they planned for this event. And then after that, we'll have time for everyone to share your poems too. So I'm going to turn it over to actually our panelists right now.
Thanks, Lillian. So we come out with a poem that we wish to share, and we decide to assign each one of us a line. So we start, and then the other will follow. I see you and I recognize you.
In the ease of a sunny morning where all the possibilities rest, at least until 9 a.m.
When the heat rises, but the birds still sing.
When most are waking, rubbing eyes and gather their thoughts on all living things.
And trees bark crumble, calling out our lymph.
We look to this day and wonder, how can I coexist?
Is it a decision or an action?
Facing into the wind, I listen.
The AC, the birds, the noise of all living things. What does breathing mean?
As I look on, I see the sunrise, giving me another day of reckoning.
Of me as a human being.
Thank you.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Actually, the three panelists, they have been emailing each other back and forth during the planning. So every day when I go to work, I'm so excited to open my email to see what additional lines they've contributed. So thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful poem with all of us. So with that, I wanted to, as I shared, open it up to all of our participants to have the opportunity to share your poems too. So if you can raise your hand using the raise hand function in the participant list, I will do my best to try to call in as many groups as possible within the time that we have allocated. So I'm going to start with Poet Resilient Transition. So I think it's Pavitra. I'm going to unmute you right now, Pavitra. So 1 second. Okay, please go ahead, Pavitra.
Thank you so much. So 5 of us, Ananya, Cynthia, Roshi, Teresa, and myself created this poem. So I'll read it for you. As I look into the future's eyes, this is what I say. Hello, welcome home. Welcome to the best time of your life. A time riddled with strife, but filled with hope, happiness, courage, and pride. As we confront our greater self, a childlike innocence comes into play and engulfs our elf-like self. At the heart of listening, I hear the voices of those waiting to be born, filled with dancing light to illuminate the world. When I hear the treasure tower, I am the treasure tower. I am who I am. As a lovely bird looking into the vast sky of freedom, as I look into the future's eyes, this is what I say. I am here. I am a Buddha. I determine. I hear. I see. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pavitra. So we're going to move on to Erica, Exquisite Evolution.
Wonderful. Hi, Pavitra. What a beautiful poem. This is from group 29. So it's at the heart of listening, I hear echoes of the past fading away. The world is suffering, requesting hope, or is listening. I definitely hear possibilities. We have lots of challenges to face. Have invincible spirit, don't be defeated. Let the beauty of all that is open to you, poet of the world.
Thank you so much, Erica. Yeah, these I'm so encouraged to know that all of you, maybe not, most of you not knowing each other, coming together in these small groups and creating such beautiful, powerful poems. I'm so encouraged. So I think we have a few more minutes. So I'm gonna go on to Adrian Landau. So I'm gonna unmute you now, Adrian.
Hi, everybody. Group 36. At the heart of listening, I hear hope. Though I cry through tears of confusion, freedom calls, freedom awakens me. As I look into the future's eyes, this is what I say. I am free.
Thank you so much, Adrian. So we have time for 2 more groups, so I want to move on to our next one. So now we have George, Resilient Transformation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I don't know our group number, but the names of the participants, Paula, Tavi, and myself, George. And it goes, at the heart of listening, I hear the cosmic black hole of silence, pure energy, an invitation into something quiet. Is it rain or is it tears? Or is it the sound of my desire to wash this place clean?
Thank you so much, George. And just to note, these are so wonderful. And actually, we're going to save the chat. So afterwards, we'll do a write-up, and we would love to post everyone's poems on our website. So we'll send the link out so you can go back and read everyone's poetry. So we're going to take one more group. So let's see. I have Paras Sud on for the next one. I hope I probably did mispronounce your name. I'm so sorry in advance. But yeah. I think you're unmuted.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So on behalf of Breakout Group number 7, Clara, Mariana, Patricia, Smith, walking with what I do, walking with what I do not want to change. I still walk with the spirit of the child, keeping my hopes and dreams high. With my shining Buddhahood, I start to run to rid the world of misery. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paras. And thank you so much. I wish we could stay on for another hour so that we could hear, all the different groups. When we were planning for the event and coming up with this open mic idea, we were talking about how a lot of times, music and art and poetry, really speak to the current moment. And we go back and listen to songs, we can really understand what was happening during that time. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be so wonderful if, we had all these poems, by our wonderful Ikeda Center community that really speak to the current moment. And we can really look back to this time and read these poems and remember how we were feeling and remember our determinations as well. To really contribute to the world with this poetic spirit. So I just want to thank all of you. I know it takes courage to really create poems together and to be vulnerable with each other. And I'm sure you all did that in your small groups. So thank you so much for joining us today. So unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our event. But at this time, I actually wanted to invite Sarah to share some words to wrap up our wonderful discussion today. Sarah's always, the one at the end of our discussions. She's always, bringing in her wisdom and helping us really see a way to move forward together. So I'm excited to welcome Sarah now. So I'll turn it over to you, Sarah.
And I remembered to unmute myself this time. My heart is just full hearing your poems, and I'm looking forward to reading all of the pieces that you all created together. It is beyond my wildest imaginings. I had so hoped that things like this might happen in this brief time together, but it does give so much, credence to the fact that there really is this poetic spirit that we all share and that we are all held within it and that we all connect through it. And again, this fact of being able to connect across all of these places that we are, very literally in terms of all of the places around the world, talk about global citizenship, yes? And then also, of course, where each of us is in our particular life's moment right now. And I so appreciate, obviously, the Ikeda Center for making this possible, but all of you for being here and bringing this wonderful energy so that we really could all be together. It makes me think of something that Jason Gula, who's a professor at DePaul University and also a wonderful friend of the center and a wonderful advisor, and has done so much in terms of understanding education and what really is at the heart of education. What he shared with us in one of our meetings, which I think I'll just read a little bit from because it seems to encapsulate so much of what we're feeling here in this moment. It's from Mr. Ikeda, and it's about the poets and who the poets are. And I would say that all of us, whether we can call ourselves poets or not, whether we feel comfortable with that framing or that label, we certainly have brought into our own lives this sense of being able to create, to make, as Valentina said, reminded us of that way in which the word poesis comes from, to make, to create, from what was not there before. And so we are all poets in that sense, also always opening the space for something new to happen, for something new to be seen. And Mr. Ikeda, in this piece that Jason had shared with us, writes, poets are those who see the eternal. I think about, it was Isaiah's prompt about thinking about what we see into the future. What is the future when we look into the future? And I love the ones that responded to that. Poets are those who see the eternal. The constant flow of life is forever in their gaze. That is why they are awake to the precious irreplaceability of each moment of being. This moment now, this fleeting instant. Because of their love for each life-filled moment, poets cannot refrain from giving expression to the poetic spirit within. And I feel that speaks so powerfully to what you all have now done in terms of this poetic spirit within, that you've given expression to this fleeting moment. I'm so glad it's recorded, but this moment that we've had and held in time together, it's really precious. And I know I'm going to take it with me into the future with that kind of vivacious, vibrant, hello, welcome, you're welcome home. I love that. I will live with that and be so glad to keep that in mind, especially in days that may again, of course, turn dark for us all. We are awake. I feel so alive right now, and I'm so grateful for that sense of vibrancy, again, that you all have brought to this moment and that you've all helped us create together. I certainly hope that you will take this forward and that you'll try writing poems with each other, and that we will just stay really vibrant within this poetic spirit that really does hold us all, connect us all, and make a future possible in which we all can be together, celebrating our vibrant and life-giving differences. So again, thanks to you all.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing those beautiful words with us to wrap up today's discussion. And what a wonderful way, to really look forward and look ahead. And so thank you all so much for joining today from all over the world. And so, we'll continue to have these virtual dialogues, and they're really only possible because we have such a wonderful community as all of you. So, we appreciate you so much for showing up in this space continuously, and really sharing your hearts and connecting with each other in such a deep way. So please stay tuned, whether through our e-newsletter or through our social media for any upcoming events, virtual events. And then we'll, of course, post we always do a write-up for our events afterwards on our website, which we'll send out through our email as well. So please look out for that. And then social media, we'll post some wonderful photos from the event too. So thank you also so much again for joining us today. And usually at the end of our event, we take a commemorative Zoom fee is what I hear they're called these days. Not a selfie, but a Zoom fee. So we're gonna take a few photos. If you don't feel comfortable to be in the photo, that's totally okay. So you can turn your camera off. But for those of you who would like to be in the screenshot, we're gonna take a couple because there's a few pages of us, if that's okay. So I'm gonna count to 3 each time. And then maybe we can say whatever it is that you would like to say. Okay, all right. So this is our first one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, peace. Okay, just a couple more. Bear with me now. Okay, 1, 2, 3, peace. Okay, 3 more. Okay, 1, 2, 3, peace. We're gonna have to talk to Zoom about how we can be more efficient with this photo taking. Okay, 1, 2, 3, peace. Okay, last one, I promise. Okay, 1, 2, 3, peace. Thank you all so much for joining. We'll hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.